So first off, welcome to everybody to this webinar for the Orolia Academic Partnership Program. We're extremely excited about this program. I looked at the registration this morning and I think we've started to accomplish what we're really seeking to do, which is to grow a global community. So I'll give you guys some statistics on who's enrolled in this so far. For this webinar, we had about 200 plus people attending. Just out of curiosity, I checked from all 7 continents of the globe and 30 plus different countries that are joining this webinar. So our whole focus of building this global community around GNSS research and education is incredibly exciting to see as we develop this program overall. But let's get going here and do some introductions as we start, so you guys get an idea who's in on the webinar. So you should see your slides moving right now. You actually have 3 of us from Orolia that will be presenting today. You have myself, Robert Burke. I will be your moderator, as well as talk about the specifics of the Orolia Academic Partnership Program. We've got Stefan Hamel, who's our actual CTO. We've got Lisa Perdue, who's our product line director. Each of them will actually have specific areas of the presentation that they'll be covering. Just for a quick check, this presentation is scheduled for a full 1 hour, but we hope to finish up somewhere around 45 to 50 minutes because we would like to leave plenty of time at the end for questions so you guys can actually ask them live. A little bit about housekeeping on the system. This webinar is being recorded. So for those of you that are out there, maybe in different time zones, maybe who haven't had a chance, the recording will be sent out, as well as sharing it with other people. If you do have questions at any time, you'll actually see there's a questions tab in the bottom right where you can submit questions in. We'll be gathering those and try to address as many at the end as possible. But if for some reason we do not get to your question, we're going to do our best to try to send out an FAQ or send the questions to everybody with the answers so that we have all the answers available for the entire audience. If for some reason during this presentation you do lose your connection, just log back in. You should be able to come right back up again. And of course, we always like to get a little bit of interaction through these presentations. So we will launch a couple of poll questions that come up on your screen. So please participate, give us a little bit of feedback on those poll questions because they're just general questions to give us an understanding about how the information that we're putting out relates to your specific organization or to your specific job and responsibilities. So the agenda for today is obviously welcoming everybody, doing the introductions, which we just did. We're going to give an overview of what we call OAPP, which stands for the Orolia Academic Partnership Program. And then we're actually going to hear some information from our CTO, Stefan Hamel, who's going to give us a little bit of an overview of that, as well as the industry and why we've started this program. Then, as I explained earlier, I'm going to go through a little bit of background. We've actually been working on this program for about a year, trying to build the foundation and get things set up, trying to get the collaboration started so that when we actually went live, you'll actually see that we actually have a strong community already started. But more importantly, we'll talk a lot about expansion and building the community going into the new year. We're going to turn it over to Lisa then, who's going to talk about new tools and open source capabilities in our Skydal simulation engine. And then we'll start a little bit about the plugins. Stefan's going to talk briefly about how to pull in plugins and what that means and how you can actually get access to those. And of course, our whole goal is to get to the very end of this so we can actually have next steps and a summary and of course, questions from the audience. But I do want to take a minute up front to really talk about the whole focus of this program. This program is not about a specific product. It's not about Orolia. It's about trying to build this global community that you'll hear us talk a lot about during this program. So you see the little quote on the right, which I truly believe, I've seen a lot of different organizations work on research programs or build their own educational curriculums on their own. And we all do well. But I think together as a community, if we can start to connect us all, start to get us all working together with some collaboration, building some open source capabilities and automation, as well as educational tools, I think we can grow better as a community, which is the whole theme of this presentation. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to our CTO, Stefan, to talk a little bit about a message from the top on how we view this program. So Stefan, you want to take it away?
Yes, thank you, Rob. So thanks for joining today. My name is Stefan Hamel. Before being the CTO at Orolia, I was actually quite involved in the simulation team as well. So I have a lot of background knowledge about the simulation. So that's why also I have some thought about how this product line should evolve. So just before we dive into the OAPP itself, I'd like to give you a bit of information about Orolia as a whole and what drives us, where we're going, so that you can see where the OAPP fit in the big picture. So you all know about the PNT and PNT services. You're probably working and doing research on PNT yourself. One thing that is always important to keep in mind that most PNT services, they actually rely on GNSS. Even though we look at alternatives, these alternatives quite often themselves depend on GNSS. So at the heart of every PNT system, usually we will find directly or indirectly GNSS is being involved. And as you know, GNSS is vulnerable. It's a weak signal. So it's susceptible to jamming, to spoofing, cyber attacks. So it's everywhere. It's used heavily in all critical applications, but it's also very vulnerable. So what Orolia is we are trying to make it more resilient. So we've developed over the years all kinds of solutions and strategies to make GNSS more reliable, better performance and usable for critical and safety. So resilient PNT rely on using GNSS technology and merging it with other emerging technologies, new technologies. So it's a combination of traditional and new things that really makes it quite a challenge. And being at the forefront of the technology comes with a lot of challenge. For example, just awareness, education. And when we talk about GNSS being vulnerable, people kind of wait and are very passive about it. They don't necessarily take action to be ready for any, down or problems with the GNSS. So there's a lot of education and awareness. So working with the academia here is really helping on that too. We have a multiplication of PNT services. There's a multiplication of threats. So all these things together, when you try to make these things working together, there's a growing complexity, and that complexity is growing exponentially, really. And as you develop these new solutions, these new technologies, a big challenge is to test and validate those solutions. So building a test bed by itself is one of the big challenge. And with the simulation software that we develop at Orolia, we're trying to address this challenge. But the problem with these test beds is as you integrate new PNT services and resiliency, you actually have to integrate multiple instruments. You have to compensate for maybe the limitation of these instruments, the interoperability between these instruments, and so on. So, and most of these instruments, the GPS emitter itself, or the other instrument, they lack the API or the ease of use to make them work together. So it brought us to think about, okay, how do we rethink GNSS simulators? And we came up with this approach where we want to go from a closed platform, which is the traditional way of doing simulation, to a more open platform, more software-defined platform. And we want to ease the collaboration between the different teams. We want to build a community, and we want to make that accessible to the academia. So we're really trying to go from a instrument dedicated approach to a more open platform that will allow collaboration. So you will see with Lisa slides and Rob going into more details how we're trying to change how we approach these things so that the simulator itself becomes a platform that allows you to do customization, to do improvements, to help each other and build that growing community. And the OAPP, where it fits for us, is to achieve that, we need to reach a critical mass, and we believe that working with the academia will help everyone to get there so that it's beneficial to not only you specifically, but to all the other people that you will try to collaborate with. So, so that's the goal of the OAPP, is to build that ecosystem and collaboration. That's it for me.
Thank you, Stefan. So at this time, I'd like to launch our very first poll. If you guys don't mind, give us just a bit of feedback on that. So you should see a poll launching for you right now. We're going to leave it on the screen for just 30 seconds or so. You guys can see the results of that, just to get a little bit of data and kind of see how everybody is. Good. Thank you. So moving on, let's talk a little bit about the background of how we came up with this Orolia Academic Partnership Program. To be honest, like I talked about, we started this program about a year ago. And it's a vision that we had to build this community that people had talked about. It looks like some of the people didn't see the poll come up. It should have been on the right side. If it didn't, that's quite all right. It's not a real big deal. But this whole concept of OAPP was to really look at some trends that were in the industry and how we could actually begin a process or a system to be able to help out with that. So I want to talk a little bit about it first from the commercial market or the defense market. So that's anybody designing a receiver, that's anyone using a receiver or an anti-jam antenna, or doing any type of application in positioning, navigation, and timing. And there was this whole direction that Stefan talked about building more resilient systems, whether that's by using augmented signals, whether that's by using, different types of services that are out there for correction data. The whole goal is to look at this concept of going towards a resilient system, as well as to protecting the GNSS signals themselves. And with COVID and with all the things that have been going on in the industry, limited time in the office or the lab has also made it difficult for all of us. We're all working from home now. We're all struggling with dealing with keeping our jobs, progressing forward without having access all the time to the equipment. And also at the same time, there's this whole concept of trying to find the right people. We struggle with this as well as a lot of companies out there, being able to find qualified people who actually have experience in GNSS or anything associated with resilient PNT. And I think it's important to bring up, because as we go through this presentation, I don't want this to be completely talking about, academics and education and research. I think working as a community, you'll see how we connect the dots through this, that there's a huge advantage also for commercial organizations or anyone beyond the academic community. But from research and academia, you've got numerous colleges and universities out there teaching fundamentals to undergraduates. And a lot of us have had to develop those courses on our own. A lot of those actually rely on our background, our history, and maybe sometimes even cater to a specific industry like aerospace. And then you jump to the advanced programs, where you do have aerospace programs, or you do have automotive type programs that focus on the advanced side of this themselves. And you've actually had a lot of PhD students doing some incredible research. A lot of us attend the ION shows or the IEEE shows every year, and there's some great research being done in the universities. And I just think there's a strong chance for us to start to actually share in that research and actually start to collaborate a lot more. But of course, it's still, at the end of the day, having access to tools and equipment. You think about test and simulation, and we all wish, we have our dream list every year of what we'd love to have. But especially in the last year or so, a lot of time budgets have changed a lot because of the trends in the industry, as well as with the current situation with COVID. So, getting equipment, having equipment in your hands is sometimes a challenge. And sometimes this equipment can exceed $500,000 US, if not more. So getting access to the equipment or having that ability to use that equipment and grow research is always a struggle. And again, that makes research and collaboration quite difficult, as I'm sure a lot of you guys can attest to. So we decided to build this community. And like I said, we started this about a year ago. So there's already a foundation, a core group of universities that we've already been working with. We're right around 30 universities right now. And the thought process over this OAPP, or Academic Partnership Program, was to have Skydale actually donate the Skydale simulation engine to key institutions. Now, what we focus on most of the time is we try to find institutions that are doing both research and education, so that we ensure that the tool can get used a lot. And again, on the research side, that's anyone working on major programs, but also on the education side, whether it's an undergrad course, whether it's advanced course, whether it's a PhD student working on programs. The goal was to get a very powerful simulation engine into their hands, and to make it as painless as possible, as well as to build a community, which I'll talk about in a little while, of where we can collaborate or share information and work together. So as you see, close to 30 universities that we have that we've kind of built up over the last year or so. And first off, I express my sincere gratitude and thanks to the organizations who actually started working with us early on this. I think your feedback, your contributions, and your assistance has really helped to make this what truly is a world-class program. But to also look at this and go out and look at it in an innovative way that we can actually go out and work together. So you'll see as we go through this, we're going to talk about the ability to build or customize your own signals. You're going to see that we've opened up some of the capabilities in this simulation engine, where you can actually build open source plugins. So if you want to add in new functionality that we don't have, you don't have to wait for us to develop it. You actually have freedom within that, and as well as the ability to publish and share that code in the community. And what we do basically is, for this program, we give a permanent license to the university that's used by the university. It is a true and sincere donation. We do not ask for anything in return. We do not have service fees or anything else that add on to that. That's their full license, which is a very robust capability, as you'll see in a couple of minutes. But two, we're very unique in that we allow temporary student licenses. So whether it's an undergrad and a student, needs a 2-week license that the professor controls with limited capabilities, or whether it's a PhD student working on a very robust research project, you actually have the ability to actually have student licenses at the same time. And if you want to see more about this, you can obviously go to the landing page. It's orolia.com/OAPP. So moving on to stay on schedule here. What are we talking about? We're talking about a solution called the Skydale Simulation Engine. And Stefan gave you an overview of that at the beginning, but this is a very powerful simulation engine. This is not some basic shareware option. This is a full simulation engine with complete control of the satellites, the atmosphere, the signal strength, the messaging itself, the antenna patterns, adding multipath in, as well as spoofing, jamming. This is a very powerful offering that we actually have the ability to authorize for qualified organizations. And as you see, there's a bunch of the traditional things that we talk about in simulation across the industry that go to the basics, but the unique capabilities is what we're really going to focus on here in a couple minutes, because I call this kind of bread and butter. This is, of course, what we do with a strong simulation engine, but the unique capabilities are something quite powerful and unique in the industry. Jumping ahead, another unique capability is we do not force you to use our hardware. The Skydale simulation engine will create all your test scenarios, stream out, anything on its own as far as IQ data. As a standalone software engine, you can actually have RINEX files and MEA data. It's quite powerful on its own. But if you actually want to modulate an RF signal, or you actually want to connect an actual device, then you do have the ability of purchasing our hardware at an educational discount. But we don't require that, again, for the donation. That's a turnkey solution that we make available. If you already have a very robust computer that actually has GPUs or graphic cards, you actually have some software-defined radios, and there's specific ones that we work with that have a better quality that can provide to anyone that needs it. You're welcome to use your own hardware. So that way, the barrier to getting going quite quickly, if you already have, software-defined radios from a well-known company like National Instruments or Edis Research or DECTech, you can be up and running quite quickly once we get you qualified and into the program. So it's quite a unique capability that we're very happy about. And it actually shows that our willingness to work across the industry goes long before, long past just the selling of products and really being a contributor to the community. Moving ahead, the actual offer that we talk about. Again, I mentioned the permanent licenses, that is yours as an organization. And then we offer the student licenses, which I mentioned, which are controllable and timed, which we work with the professors or the organizations to control those licenses. But we have the ability to offer all commercial signals, all frequencies, all constellations. And I emphasize commercial because obviously when we get into classified encrypted signals, we do support those on the platform, but obviously that's not something that we necessarily directly donate for obvious reasons. But you have the ability to control all aspects that I mentioned earlier. You do have the capability for onboard interference, for testing for jamming, for spoofing built into it. That is not a separate software package. That's not separate hardware devices. That's built into the capabilities. And again, whether you're talking about a simple 5G cell site for timing, or whether you're talking about a plane flying through the air at very fast speeds, it has the capability of supporting all of the applications that are very common in the industry. Of course, the ability to interface other devices. So whether that's IMUs, sensors, RTK, or all the standard technologies that are used beyond just generic GPS or GNSS. Hill systems or hardware in the loop is all part of that. But most important, what we talked about earlier is you can create your customized signals too. So whether you're working on a technology that's brand new, whether you want to kind of build your own signals, whether it's some type of LEO type application, you do have the ability to develop within the platform. And of course, the plugins, which Lisa is going to give us more information on in just a bit, where you can actually build advanced capabilities also. All right, so for OAPP members, I think the benefits are pretty much self-explanatory. If you're a member of the program, you've probably started using the system. Quite a few of you have already started using it. Several organizations have already implemented it and put it into their curriculums also. But being able to have a system this powerful in your hands, the benefits of time and efficiency and cost, I think it speaks for itself. But also, especially in today's world, having the capability to work as a community. I truly believe that working across organizations, whether that's different universities, whether it's organizations that are working on a defense project, whether it's a commercial application where maybe a chipset or receiver companies working with universities, having that ability to work as a community, to share as a community, to ask questions, to get advice, maybe even to see if someone else is already working on the same thing that you need, I think is incredible in my opinion. Add in the open source capabilities and giving you some freedom to develop on your own. I think that makes it quite beneficial. And of course, a common tool that we're all using for research and education, I think is incredible to actually have that capability. Nothing's worse than trying to work on a program without having all the tools, and more importantly, being able to share files and test scenarios and information and coding with another organization, I think really validates where we're going with this program. I did want to make a comment because there was a lot of commercial companies, several defense companies, other organizations. There were quite a few that registered for this webinar. I wanted to make sure I connected the dots for you also. I think the benefits of actually having this solution in a lot of organizations is huge. Whether that means you have graduates coming out of universities that are more qualified because they've used test and simulation, whether that means it's some type of program where you can actually sponsor a student in the organization, whether you're overwhelmed and you want to actually have a university or a research student working on a project or a program for you, I think you see the connection from the commercial side way beyond academia. It's about working as a community. And it's something that I've had a vision on for quite some time, about trying to figure out how we all work together, especially in an organization sometimes when standards are not as relevant as they are in other industries. I think it's huge to be able to do that. All right, so moving along. Do we want to try a poll again? Let's launch a poll real quick. Hopefully you guys can see the poll that comes up very quickly. So it looks like the poll is live. If you cannot see the poll, please let me know. Very good. Moving on then. So let's talk a little bit about what's next for the program itself so we can get into specifics. As we look ahead to the new year, the timing of this program was quite critical for us. Sometimes it's a bit dangerous having a webinar just before the holidays or between several holidays in some countries. But if you think about where we want to go in the new year, we really wanted to take that year to build the content, to build the community forum. So you can actually go out and see the forum that actually has a lot of content and information on there. We wanted to actually be able to actually get a lot of this up and rolling. So for the new year, we would like to get, maybe double where we are, maybe even reach towards 80 organizations that are working together in the community forum, that are sharing information, that are growing this. And we're looking at pushing this into many regions. If you actually follow LinkedIn, you'll actually see we put a press release out just a week or so ago, where it's not just about working with academia, but the Mexican Space Agency has sponsored us in Mexico. So we have the top 5 or 6 universities in Mexico, as well as the Mexican Space Agency, to work on regional issues and regional programs. So in some regions, some countries, if you actually have multiple companies working together, I think it's critical to start thinking about how we can leverage this community beyond what we're talking about here. So we're open to programs, we're open to ideas in different regions, and take this really globally. And then open the community forum to anybody. We haven't advertised this drastically. We wanted to build the content there because nothing's worse than having a community forum without a lot of data on there. So we've been adding app notes, white papers, videos, how-to type things, lots of questions on there. And we ask you guys, log into the forum. It's learn.orolia.com, and that'll be part of the follow-up that comes out to you guys. But these additional tools and resources are out there. It's hard to get going with a powerful engine with just a simple user manual. Each of us are working on different projects and programs. So you'll see we're constantly adding new information. So for the existing members that are on the line, if you haven't been on the community forum lately, go out and take a look at it. Again, there's the link again, learn.orolia.com. There's a lot of new white papers and information in there that our folks have published. And more importantly, this is a plea for cooperation. If anybody's working on programs or projects or white papers, you are welcome to post information on the forum. We do not want to take credit for that. You can host it on your webpage and simply put the link there. But the goal is to make sure that we start to leverage all of you and share information. So if there's a research document that maybe a PhD student is working on, you've built a plugin. I know several universities have started building their plugins already. You have a how-to video, you name it, anything that makes the project better, we're very open to. And of course, collaboration that we mentioned earlier, we would like to improve this and grow this. Everybody that's already in the program, we're going to probably try to set up a call with each of you early in the new year to dig a bit into your curriculums for education, to maybe ask some nosy questions on your research to see if there's areas that are there so that we can work with you, so we can become a better partner, and maybe even by learning that, we can connect you with other organizations globally that might be working on similar programs as a full community. Moving ahead, 3 other things I want to mention. Communication-wise, I have not really sent a lot of information to our members to this point. I've used the forum, but if you're a member already, you should have received the very first email the other day that was sent out to everybody with the new updates to the Skydo license. But we're going to start doing things like quarterly newsletters and so forth. And if you'd like to actually publish in that, where you actually want to emphasize a program you're working on, we'd like to choose organizations in the community that publish something on that quarterly, so that we actually kind of start to build out information and share knowledge across the board. Student challenges or competitions is this idea we have. We've talked about it a lot. And it's something that I would like to implement in the new year, where we actually take organizations and actually have students build teams and put a challenge out there or something, some type of competition where they get to compete. And whether that's, some type of award like internships or travel to some of the industry shows, I think it'd be a bit fun to be able to use a common tool and actually have some little competitive nature come out of all of us and a bit of fun, but more importantly, to help to grow the knowledge of the professionals of tomorrow. And last but not least, I know there's a ton of people struggling to find people for work out there. We suffer this same thing. So one of our aspirations for maybe mid-year is start to publish job boards. So commercial organizations can put job postings out there. We can connect to universities and the graduates they have coming out of their programs to see if we can find a way to actually help people move along into the industry, as well as to help the industry find credible resources and maybe even see examples of some of the work that they've worked on in the past. So I think some of these are lofty goals, but I think they're very realistic. And one of the things that I am asking for is I would like to form a community forum, a steering committee, if you may call it, of people that might want to volunteer who are members, that we get together once a quarter, maybe only for about an hour, and just say, where are we? What are some programs that we're working on? What can we do better? What's the platform need? Just to get some advice from the community and ideas from the community. So it's not Orolia's program at the end of the day. It's a program that we are all involved with. So any of you that are already members out there, if you'd like to volunteer, it's not a lot of time that we're looking for, just kind of a quarterly meeting, just to catch up, compare notes, and get feedback from the community. I think it would be awesome. Alrighty, that is a lot of information quite quickly on the program. Before I hand it over to Lisa Perdue to talk about the specifics of the tool, maybe we can launch one more poll so that everybody can take a look at it and maybe give us a bit of feedback on the actual question itself. So I'll let that poll up for about 30 seconds there. And Lisa, if you'd like to take it away and give them some specifics about the new tools and the open source capabilities, that would be great.
Yep, thanks, Rob. The tools that I've chosen to present here in the next few slides are not your basic features. They're the more advanced tools that we have in Skydell that you may not even be aware of. So I just wanted to give you that introduction to them. We don't have time here today to go through them in detail, but definitely wanted to let you know about their existence, what they're for, and if you have more use case for them, you can let us know and we can provide more information. The first feature is what we call custom signal. So this one allows you to create your own signals, custom signals, that can be streamed either alone or alongside GNSS signals. So you can add your own custom signals in to your simulation. So you can design both GNSS type signals and non-GNSS signals. You can, especially nowadays where LEO navigation, LEO constellations is a big area of research and big area in the commercial world as well. You can actually design your signals, simulate them with a simulator, try different things, figure out exactly what you want, and you don't have to come to us every time to make a little change for you in the signal. You have full control over that yourself. So how do we do that? You need to provide us an XML file in a C++ shared library. You can actually use the same library for multiple signals, but you can see in the diagram below with the little guy, there's the XML file coming in, the DLL file coming in, and what we do is you define as a user all this different signal characteristics. So that would be like the chips here, the code chips, the DAV message, it will all come from the library, and then you'll define things like the subcarrier or subcarriers and the modulation coefficient. That will all be defined in your XML file. So you'll give us those inputs that go in, and within SkyDel, we'll do all of the, handle all the satellite visibility, signal dynamics, and impairments. So you don't have to worry about the engine to handle all of those different events or parts of the signal. You just need to define the signal characteristics, and we'll handle the rest within the SkyDel engine. In the bottom here, on the bottom right, this is where we have, this is the GUI. So you can see that within custom signal, it's integrated right into the same SkyDel GUI that everything else is integrated into. You can see from your XML file all the different characteristics and what different signal parameters that you've set. And then you can start simulating and designing and determining how your system works with the signal that you designed. The next one that I want to point out, this one is something that comes with, SkyDel as just the base feature, but it's really important and it's really powerful. So I wanted to make sure that we talk about the automation, or SkyDel Automate. So this is provided in order to help you get familiar with the SkyDel API. So I know it can be overwhelming when you want to do something remotely and control the unit, but you just have a big programming manual in front of you and you don't know where to start. That is not the case with SkyDel. You have open source API clients that include examples for common tasks. We provide those to you right with the SkyDel installation in Python, C++, C#, and LabVIEW. So any of those languages, you already have a start to what you want to do. You can just modify and edit the things that already exist. You can also, on the Automate tab for SkyDel, every single thing that you click in the GUI is showing up here as a command. So you have a list of commands that you've done, and you can go back and look and see, okay, this is exactly how I would send this over if I was doing it remotely. You double click on one of them, you can get a description of every parameter in that line that you're clicking on, depending on what it is. It could be something with multiple parameters or just one. But that's how you can learn what the commands are and how to use them without having to dig through a manual. Of course, we have that book available, virtually, of course, but it's a lot easier to use the built-in Automate in order to get all that information. In fact, you can also take all of those lists of commands and export them right to a Python script. So if I take, I click on the GUI, I do 5 different things, set my date and time, my location, the basic things for a simulation, I can export that to Python, and now I have a fully complete script that I can just run straight from there to repeat those commands. But I could also edit it. So I can make it my own. I can add commands in there. I can modify different times that things should happen. Maybe I had it adjusting power level by 5 dB, but actually want it to be by 3. I can make those small edits right in the Python script. So you're not starting with a blank page. You're starting with almost everything that you can make modifications to. So it makes it a lot easier for you to control the unit remotely and integrate it into your own devices. And the last one that I want to introduce here is plugins. So plugins is something brand new and something that we've not really talked a lot about in the past, but it is a really powerful feature of SkyDel. So what we do is we have a SkyDel plugin SDK. So you can see that on the bottom here in the blocks. And you would add your own code to that using the SDK, and you have your own client plugin. So this is a compiled library that you would use with SkyDel, integrates into the GUI, and you use that for real-time communication with the SkyDel engine. So that's the image on the left here. You can see you have your plugin on the left, you have the SDK in the middle, and all the communication that it's doing between SkyDel and the plugin. So this allows you to design really any type of feature that you want where you can get communication from the SkyDel engine in order to design that. We have what we call plugin roles available. And these are the different interfaces that we have to SkyDel. So we have the core interface that's going to give you, this is the minimum mandatory feature set that you would use in your plugin. And we have examples for those, for some of these as well. So we have information about the time, if you want to receive the radio time, if you want to receive the SkyDel real-time position at 1000 Hertz, if you want to receive raw SkyDel data, If you want to look at, if you're running hardware in the loop and you want to see what's happening, what the position data is that's coming in through hardware in the loop, you can see that. You can actually license your plugin separately. You can get the user graphs and statistics about what's going on inside SkyDel engine. If you're trying to time something specifically, you can get all of the, like, it's pretty much whatever's going on in the engine, you have access to understand what's happening and how they relate to each other. And then finally, the direct access to the SkyDel's remote API. So that's really powerful in that it gives you 500, like over 500 different command access that you can use right from your plugin. So you don't have to have your plugin running plus another software to run the API commands. You can do it right from your plugin. So we give you access to all of that data and information where you don't have to touch the SkyDel source code at all. This is all, the SDK is open source. You can go ahead and design your own plugin. If you need another role, if you need access to some different data, then you can just let us know on the user forum, and we can probably look at that and see if it's something we can implement or not. But we want to make sure that you have access to all the different tools that you need in order to design your own plugin. And that what that really does is allow you to, if you say you have a feature request that you would like added to the simulator. Traditionally, you would go back to the simulator manufacturer, us, or whoever simulator that you're using, and ask them to implement a new feature. Then that takes time. So you ask for the implement the feature, and then you wait. Well, in this case, you could, collaborate with us and we can work on it together, or you can just build your own plugin. You don't need our support in order to do it. You can build your own and use it however you want. You can share that with others. You can keep it just for yourself. You can actually publish it and license it if you wanted to. So that's all within the plugin system that we have for SkyDel. So it can be very powerful in what you can do with it. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stefan, who's going to explain more about how to get started with plugins. So if that sounded interesting to you, you can take a look. But he is going to tell you about where to go and how to get more information so that you can actually start to build your own plugin.
Thank you, Lisa. So I hope you're excited about this feature. We had a lot of fun developing this. What we actually did is we work with a lot of value-added resellers that keep asking for more and more powerful features, but this is really empowering you to add your own customization that will interact in real time. So we believe it's a very strong tool that will also support your research, because when you ask for features that don't really have a commercial application for us, we cannot really prioritize that, but giving you the ability to do it yourself is really unlocking a lot of possibilities for everyone. So if you want to get started with this, it's pretty simple. We chose GitHub to host the plugin SDK. So it's fairly simple. You just need to visit the repo and you can see that there's a lot of documentation there. I invite you to read the documentation. It will explain to you how to install a build environment for both Linux and Windows and how to build your first plugin. We have plenty of examples. So you can do your first Hello World kind of plugin pretty easily in a matter of minutes. So it's really a powerful tool, and it's pretty easy to get started if you follow the documentation there. So just fork the repo and you can start coding there. And if you have questions, we would really appreciate that you go through the forum, because most of your questions, you're not alone. So when you ask your questions on the forum and we answer those questions on the forum, it becomes public knowledge, so people can Google, search for questions, find answers. So it will reduce the workload on our side, and it also speed up the response time so people can find questions and answer directly from the forum. So we believe it's a very powerful tool that we should be using more in the future with you. So GitHub is it's well-known website to host source code. You can use it, you can branch, you can have your plugins in the cloud. It can be a public or private repo, or you could just do it in your own private environment. It's very flexible. If you want to share your plugins, which we hope you will do in the future, is you simply fork again the repo, the SDK repo, and you edit the README file, and you just add a reference in the featured plugin section. So you just add your own plugin in there, a small description, and you just send us a pull request. We will do a quick screening. We'll look at what the plugin is, where the link is going to, and we will merge your request so that your plugin will be featured on the Orolia landing page here. As you do plugins, you can also use the forum again to promote it, to post it, and engage with the community. We have a number of plugins that will be published soon. We have many in development. So, for example, we have plugins to add RTCM message. We have plugins to add the trajectory analysis. So if you want to look at the first, second, and third derivative of the trajectory that you just import, that's really easy to do. In terms of licensing, what we encourage is that you use a permissive license. The reason why we ask for that, again, it's your code. You can do as you prefer, but the idea of this, this forum and the plugin, we're trying to build a collaborative ecosystem. So the more permissive you are in your licensing, it will actually allow also the industry to contribute. Otherwise, the industry cannot really use open source code that are very restrictive. So we want to have those bridges built between academia and the industry. And it's also a great way to have others contributing to your source code. Also, by being more permissive on your licensing, it allows to make sure that when you do you share your code. Sorry, I lost my train of thoughts here, but it's really important that you be permissive. That it will allow us to collaborate even more. One last thing also on this one, these plugins are shared in a public repository. So we ask you to always be careful for everything you download from the internet. So be careful what you look. It's good to have a good inspection of the code. And we do the same before we promote anything on our landing page. We will look at the code, making sure that everything is all safe. So back to you, Rob.
Thank you so much, Stefan, and thank you, Lisa. So I was a little concerned from the beginning about staying on schedule, but I think we've managed to do it. So let me summarize this really quickly, and then I've got 4 or 5 questions that have been coming in. And if you actually have another question while I'm summarizing it, go ahead and put it in the question menu, and we'll try to address those either now or following the session. So big picture, I think I've said this multiple times. I think Stefan and Lisa have both emphasized this. This is about building the community. And I think Skydell is just a tool. And of course, we benefit from the tool being used. I don't think anyone's naive, but the goal is to build a community where we work together, where we share information, where we share code, where we share automation, ask questions in a public forum, share documents. That's our focus here, because I think that will change the trend across the industry on how we actually do test and simulation, whether it's for research, whether it's for learning or for academia or for putting it into your curriculum, or whether it's collaboration with commercial or defense or government organizations. That open source capabilities or the ability to build your own signal, that's freedom. It's something that a lot of people haven't had. Being able to take and do something on your own, because we've all been there at some time or another where we want some specific feature or function from a tool we use, but it may not always be the highest priority by the company itself. So this gives you freedom to be able to do some work on your own. And of course, for students, for researchers, you can share that information. It's notoriety. It's showing your credibility as an organization also. In the research and education industry, if you're a member, keep doing what you're doing. I'll be working with you guys. Make sure you jump in and get involved with that. If you're not a member, this question actually came up. You can go to orolia.com/OAPP, and you can actually go in there, and there's a place to request an OAPP license. And you put in the actual request for that. We'll get on a call. We'll go through the qualification process just to make sure we're all on the same page. I'll give you a brief demonstration of Skydell if you haven't seen it, but you can definitely register for that on the internet. And then last but not least, if you are an OAPP member, please, let's start sharing. I know it's not something we're all used to. We're all caught up in our world. And I feel it's been tough in the last year or two, especially for educators trying to teach in a different way. Maybe you don't always have the students in front of you, or how do you educate lab exercises, things like that, with a remote community due to COVID. So if you've done some work, if you've done some research, I've seen quite a bit. Several universities have started sharing the information, but please put that on your server. It's your information, and actually just share it with the community, please. If you're a commercial or defense organization, look at these organizations as partners. Look at finding ways of working with these local organizations. We're getting quite a few universities across the globe, a lot of research organizations we're starting to talk to now. So think about how you can work together, how you can maybe use or not use, work closely with these universities to maybe have additional resources, and most importantly, contribute to the professionals of tomorrow. So it's a quick summary there. I'm going to go through a couple of questions. There were one or two that were submitted prior to this. You guys all had a chance to ask questions prior. I've been monitoring the screen a little bit too, and I've got the first four starter questions here that have been coming in. So I will address the first one quite quickly because I don't think I said it. There was a question in the actual question tab about these slides being available. And the answer is absolutely. We will actually have these slides available to everyone that attended following this. And if you'd like to run through this in a private session so we can talk specifically about your capabilities, that's my role. That's what I'm here for, to actually help you with that. But the slides will be made available for sure. The second question that came up, and I'm going to direct this one over to Lisa Purdue, if you don't mind, Lisa, is we didn't really go into details about the configuration. But a question came up about the recommended configuration to run Skydel. So maybe you can briefly run through the PC, the GPU, and the SDR. If you don't mind, could you do that, Lisa?
Sure. And I can start by saying that the license you get for the Skydel software is going to have all the features enabled. So as far as configuration on the software side, or which signals that you need, you'll have access to all of them that we can simulate with the lab license that you get as part of OAPP. But on the hardware side, it really depends on what your use case is. If you're just generating IQ data, then you just need a GPU in your PC. So we support NVIDIA GPUs. Depending on how many signals that you're trying to create and what the bandwidth of those signals are, depends how powerful of a GPU that you need. But we have systems running like a P1000 type, if you're familiar with that at all, NVIDIA GPU, which is a very, very low end. And then we also have some systems running very, very high end, top of the line NVIDIA GPUs, because they want to do thousands and thousands of signals. So, and we can also put multiple GPUs together. So we can generate the IQ data with the GPU. Because that's where the modulation is done. And then if you want to actually generate RF, you need to have a software defined radio. Today we support a few of them, from National Instruments, different variety, the USRP radios and the VST system, the Edis Research USRP radios, it's like the same thing as NI, and the DECTEC PCIe cards that you can put inside of your computer. So if you can use one of those, and how many of those you need, it's going to depend on how many frequency bands that you need to simulate. So you just need one of them if you want to just do like L1 band signals. So if you have a specific requirement, it's really easy to just post a question on the forum. We can answer it quickly on what hardware you would need, what we would recommend. And if you have other hardware that you would like to see supported that we don't support today, you can put that on the forum too, so that we can look when we do research on adding new radios, then you can there's a potential for us to add support for that radio if it meets our minimum requirements for Skydel.
And to add into that, if you're worried about PC concerns and so forth, all of the minimum requirements for the PC itself are actually in our online user manual in the forum also. So thank you, Lisa. Adding on to that, Stefan, if you don't mind, I'd like to direct this question at you. Lisa covered this, but the question came up in the chat, and I think you answered it, but I think it's a good question publicly. Are we looking at supporting more SDRs in the future going forward beyond the 3 primary ones that Lisa talked about.
Yes, absolutely. The architecture of a SkyDel is hardware independent, although we provide turnkey system with the GSG8 with BroadSim, with hardware that's been specifically optimized and tuned to run SkyDel. We do support other radios, and we keep looking at new models. So it's part of our strategy to add more radios in the future. We recently added a very high-end radio for a specific project from National Instrument, the VST. So those are very high-end radios, but we also look at the other side of the spectrum to include more affordable radios. So keep looking at our forum, our blog. When we add something, we will post it, and we also have on our website a list. I can probably post a link on the list of radios that we currently support.
Thank you, Stefan. I really appreciate it. And then the fourth question, I think I addressed this, but I am going to say this one last time publicly. Several people ask questions about how do I get started if I'm not a current member of OAPP. So we tried to make that quite easy. If you go to orolia.com/OAPP, OAPP, you'll actually see a description of this program. And then off on the side, as well as I think at the very, very bottom, there's a chance to apply to OAPP as a member. If you fill out that form, it'll come directly to me, and we can set up some time to walk through it. I would like to understand what you're working on. I would never want to violate any type of projects, but generally what projects you're working on, how is it in your curriculum, and so forth. But fill out that form, let me know, and we'll go through the qualification process, which is quite easy. We try to understand what you're doing. We want to make sure, if at all possible, you're doing both academics and research, so that it actually hits on both ends of the side. And then at that point, we'll run through it quite quickly. So let me look at the chat window here. There's been several questions that have popped up. Looks like they've been answered. So Robert asked a question there about the ability to collaborate with other organizations, whether it's infrastructure or whatever. So it looks like Stefan has answered that. But if we can collaborate with you on a project, a program, if you have ideas, if you have actually a region, maybe you're in a country where there's not a lot of work being done, fill out the form, get in touch with us, and let's talk about it. Because I think there's always ways of working together to build the community and to help each other out. There was a question that came up quite briefly that was already answered also, which is about, is there any commercial companies involved in this program? We are working with commercial organizations, but a lot of times that's with a research organization or a university that's actually working on a program. But again, bring it forward, because we're pretty open to kind of looking at new programs and projects. It's worth talking about. And then we just had one last question pop up in the last minute that I have. I'll probably throw this over to you, Lisa. Can we process IQ data generated by SkyDel by an open source SDR GNSS receiver like GNSS-SDR?
Yeah, so I'm not familiar exactly with the open source SDR, the GNSS receiver, to know that level of detail, but I did write in the answer the IQ data that we generate is consistent with the GNSS SDR meta standard that you can find at the sdr.ion.org. So if that format works for the receiver that you're using, then yes, you can absolutely use it.
And maybe just to add on this, the IQ output is not encrypted. It's not a proprietary format, so you could just convert it to the bit resolution that you need or the format that you need, but what we output is fairly easy to process.
Very good. And with that, we've got less than a minute left, so we'll wrap up here. So first off, thank you so much for attending this webinar. We're excited about this program. Hopefully, we touched on areas that are important to you also. Going forward, if you actually have questions on this, you can obviously go through our webpage that we talked about, Orolia/OAPP. But of course, at the end of the day, I think if you actually need to get in touch with me, my contact information is pretty easy. I think I published it at the beginning. It's robert.burke@orolia.com. And of course, always through LinkedIn, you can get in touch with me also. So with that, we'll close this out. I appreciate your time. I wish you all a happy holidays. And we thank you so much for attending the Orolia webinar on the Academic Partnership Program.